Welcome to October's Tech of the Month, where we discuss all the latest news and reviews. This month, we take a closer look at Specialized's attempt to offer top-end wheel performance for a much lower price. And as we draw closer to winter and indoor training season really ramps up, we ask the question, is riding outdoors in winter completely over? We've also got the Garmin Giveaway, so be sure to stick around for that one. First up then, onto those Specialized wheels. Stefan, what can you tell us about them?
So the first point to make really is that the new Roval Rapide CL II are basically the same as the Roval Rapide CLX2 that launched earlier this year, back in May. The main difference between the wheels really comes down to just the spokes and the hubs, which have been swapped out for slightly cheaper and heavier versions and the DT Swiss 350. Although, considering the pedigree for its durability, it's maybe not so much of a downgrade as just changing tracks a little bit to something that's more durable and sort of better for year-round riding. Perhaps the most significant difference, though, is the difference in price. And so we've shaved off £1,000 off the price and down to £1,500, which is, I'd say, the most competitive price point for wheels, and we'll get into how it stacks up against the competition in just a bit.
Surely there's got to be a weight penalty attached to that.
There is, but it's not very significant, to be fair. It's about 70 grams between the wheels, and so for a difference in price of £1,000 to only have a penalty of 70 grams. And again, that's 70 grams for the durability of a DT Swiss 350 hub. And so there's not much, there's really not much in it for the difference in price. And just to underline things, that you are getting the exact same rims as you are getting on the CLX2s, which are really quite impressive in quite a few ways, or at least quite notable in quite a few ways. And so while a lot of brands have been moving to hookless rims for the benefits that it brings in terms of the dropping the weight and also the smooth lines between the tyre and the rim, and also the sort of decreased manufacturing costs, Specialized has decided to stick with a hooked rim profile for the CLX wheels, and by extension the CL wheels.
So what would you compare these wheels to? What else? Because you say it's a hotly contested part of the market. What are those competitors?
So I think that Zipp is quite an interesting one, especially recently with the wheels that it's been releasing over the past months and years now. And I think the Zipp 404 Firecrest specifically, it's targeting exactly the same price point, but there are some key differences between them. Maybe first off in the way that they're manufactured, or the shape that they're going with. We've got the Zipp going for hookless, we've got for Roval wheels going for hooked, and we see quite a difference in terms of the weight between these two wheels. And so the Zipp 404s are coming in nearly 100 grams lighter, and so on the happy side of the 1,500 gram mark, as opposed to Roval, which is missing out on the other. Zipp 404s are 58 millimeters deep compared to the 51-60 millimeter split, and so there's a lot of different ways that these two brands have gone about trying to optimize the wheel, and it's hard to say which one is actually going to work out fastest. But the divergence between the two, I think, is quite interesting, with Roval going for hooked with a flat leading edge, that wide external rim width, and going for mismatched rim depths between the front and the rear, whereas Zipp is going for the hookless profile, so you've got that clean transition between the tyre and the rim. You've got rims that are the same, front and rear, at 58 millimeters, so a fair bit deeper on the front than Roval. And then you've got the internal rim width as well, which is 23 millimeters for the Zipp wheels, and so plumping out the tyres that bit more. So quite a divergence in how the two brands are trying to optimize the wheels for the fastest possible speeds.
So, I mean, how does this translate to price, though? Because that's one thing that's, it's going to be really easy for everyone to understand. How does that differ?
Well, in terms of the price between the Zipp and between the Roval, which I think is maybe the fairest comparison, they're dead on exactly the same price.
So it sounds like those are going to be some pretty aero wheels, but I think we have seen some brand new wheels from HED. They've brought out something which resembles a donut. Tell me more about it, because it looks a little bit funky.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly aero donut, basically. And it's built for the Kona Ironman World Championship specifically, because you're not allowed to run a disc wheel in that. So what HED have basically done is built a rim that's 180 millimeters deep. And so it's just got a tiny little hole, just enough space for the hub and some very short spokes. And HED is saying it's their most aero wheel that's not a disc. So it's like 5 to 8 watts faster than the next deepest section wheel that they do. I think the other thing is the weight. It's 1,200 grams or just over and it's available in rim brake and disc brake, which is quite interesting.
Wow. Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, it's made for a very specific group of people. Because really, I mean, anyone outside of the world of Kona and Ironman World Championships, they would just run a disc.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they've made it for a very, very small number of people, haven't they?
They've made it for some HED-sponsored athletes who are going to be using it or will have used it by the time you're watching this at Kona. But it's being offered on HED's website, and so presumably they are anticipating that some people are going to buy it and use it. Some people get worried about discs in very blowy conditions, in UK time trials and triathlon and everything else. And so, maybe it is just a little bit of a compromise, and it's faster than a deep section wheel, but you've got that little bit more stability than if you're using a full rear disc.
Yeah, in terms of the weight, how does that stack up against full disc wheels? Are you saving a little bit of weight having that little cutout in the middle with the spokes?
Well, you're not really, because it's which is quite surprising. HED actually make a disc that's a little bit lighter than that, a little bit lighter than 1,200 grams, but they also make a track disc that's heavier. But I mean, as everybody knows, it's all about aerodynamics and not weight. So probably the actual aerodynamics of this wheel are going to outweigh any sort of extra grams. So I would say that's not really going to be a worry particularly. Take a guess. What do you think the first product that Specialized made back in 1976 was, when I was just a mere middle-aged man? I was a bit younger than that, actually, don't worry.
Could it be some handlebars?
No, not handlebars.
Saddles, perhaps?
Not a saddle.
What was it?
It was a tyre. Awesome. Yeah, and I think, Specialized have just been reminding us about this all over again when they've just updated the new turbo range. So the S-Works Turbo is the top range of tyres, and they've just added 4 models, or rather replaced the family with 4 new models. And they start from £35, which is a tube type, and go up in £10 increments up to the top Rapid Air 2BR, which is the one that's been used by Yves Lampart when he won the Tour de France Prologue, and Demi Vollering and other pro riders. They've been using them all season, actually, but now Specialized has just launched them.
Brilliant. So, I mean, clearly their race pedigree has been proven with some Grand Tour wins.
Yeah.
What is it that makes them special?
Okay, so basically they're using dual compound, which is not anything new. But what Specialized has done is developed a new compound for the middle of the tyre, which is the harder, the more wear-resistant section. And on the shoulders of the tyre, they've kept the same T5, which is the old compound, which is a slightly grippier one. So it's got the centre section, which is for speed and durability, wear, and the old shoulder section for grip. And basically that's what they've done. So the top tyre, which is the S-Works Turbo Rapid Air 2BR, that costs £65, which is the same as the Corsa Next, the latest one, and it's cheaper. It's actually £10 cheaper than the Continental GP5000 STR, which is their latest, and the same with the Schwalbe, the top Schwalbe, which is the Pro 1 TLE, which is also £75. So it's £10 cheaper than that. That top one is hookless compatible, and the next one is too. And then you've got the S-Works Turbo, plain S-Works Turbo, which costs £45, and that is actually a tube type. So it's nice to see that Specialized are not leaving behind the people who don't want to mess around with sealant.
Well, we've seen that some brands have struggled a little bit with the move to hookless, most notably perhaps the Continental. So has Specialized done anything in particular to ensure that the tyres are going to stay on the rim when inflated?
Well, yeah, they have. I mean, if our former tech editor, Michelle, managed to blow an STR clean off the rim by just going only a little bit above the ISO recommended 72.5. Now, tyres are supposed to be able to hang on to 115% of 72.5 PSI. That's the ISO regulation. But what Specialized has done is made sure that this is what they claim, is that the tyre is going to stay on at 200% of 72.5 PSI. So if you want to run your tyres at 140 PSI, I mean, it's not recommended, but you could do in theory if you wanted to.
Now, we're only a month away from the clocks going back, and it is starting to get pretty dark outside already. And I imagine a few of you are already turning to your indoor trainers to get your miles in on the bike. However, it did get me thinking. Is riding outdoors dead in winter now? Because, I mean, there's a lot of arguments to riding indoors, and really, does it make sense to ride outdoors anymore?
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm just dusting off the mudguard bike, getting the tights out of my drawer, pulling on the Belgian booties. This is what winter's all about, isn't it?
Well, I don't know if I really want to go outside to just be cold, potentially hit by a car, probably get soaked. There's just so many more benefits to riding indoors. So from your perspective, why would you rather choose riding outdoors than staying indoors?
Well, I mean, cycling is a lot about tradition, as we know. And I think when the clocks change, that's the time to get the mudguard bike out. That's the time to really relax into your steady miles, go out with your mates, your club, and enjoy yourself. You haven't got the pressure of racing. You've just got to do miles. You go along at your steady 17 miles an hour. You're with real people. It doesn't cost you anything. Maybe you've got some old winter clothes that you put on, but you haven't got to buy a smart trainer. You haven't got to spend loads of money on you haven't got apps and whatever. You've got your winter bike, which is traditionally the components have gone down from your race bike onto your winter bike. Yeah. You just get out there and do it and enjoy it.
That's
Relax.
true. I mean, Stefan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think that if you've executed your season perfectly and you've got all your racing in, and now it's the time to settle back and start the winter build. But I mean, it's easy for things to go wrong in the summer. You've got so many other sort of stresses on your time, and so I feel like for quite a few people are going to be getting into winter and wanting to sort of maximize your fitness. Get the biggest fitness gains that you can as quickly as possible, and that comes from high intensity training. And I don't know about you, doing high intensity intervals outside in the winter is just so unpleasant. I mean, doing a 5-minute effort up a hill, you're getting so hot and sweaty by the time that you hit the top, and then covered in sweat, you descend back down, and then you're freezing as well. And so I think that riding outdoors at a steady pace in the winter, that's fine. You can get your layering spot on, but intervals, it just doesn't work. And so indoors is where you want to be doing those. And I think that today with Zwift, with the smart trainers, you still get, it's not quite the same as being outside with real people and the actual face-to-face interaction, but the community that you get online for the Zwift racing is really, really quite good, and it keeps you motivated and boost your fitness. And so I think there's a lot to be said for the indoor training, I think, when it comes to winter riding.
I think you've got to build your pyramid from the bottom, haven't you? Really, you've got to. Who's going to be doing those intervals in the winter? I mean, you've got to really be doing your steady miles, and you've got to build the base of your pyramid, and then you've got to be doing those intervals when the weather gets better, haven't you?
But I think we all know now that actually you can get rid of those long base miles and replace them with quicker, more efficient interval sessions. And you don't need, that's the thing, you don't need to go out for hours on end, and you can build that base of the pyramid, as it were, with interval sessions indoors that are quicker to do. So, I mean, going out and freezing your nuts off, it doesn't really make sense anymore. Surely. Sure, I just don't think it does. And plus, I think for me, it is that thing about layering, getting your clothing right. If you don't have it, if you don't have the right kind of stuff, then you end up needing to go and buy new coats, jackets, leg warmers, all the latest stuff, just to make sure that you can keep your body in in comfort, really. Whereas you're riding indoors, you can just continue to use your summer kit. Maybe you don't even need a jersey, but then winter kit, I mean, it's not cheap either.
It isn't. It's true. It's not cheap, and the market, so the cycling industry wants you to buy a lot of stuff. But you don't really have to. You don't have to. Look at the old boys. They used to go out in lots of layers of wool.
It doesn't need to be bespoke. It doesn't need to be specific, does it?
Yeah.
You can put on what you want, really. Like the jackets that you already own. If you're wanting to go as fast as you can and do like a winter century in the fastest possible time, then sure. You want to have a tight-fitting bib tights and nicely skin-tight jacket. But at the end of the day, you can get out and ride in whatever you have, really.
And here's one more thing to add to it, actually. Resilience. You've got to build your resilience, haven't you? You've got to harden yourself up in the winter. Otherwise, how are you going to be a good racer in the summer? If you've been hiding indoors, you've got to get out there, toughen yourself up.
Although speaking of resilience, I'd say that in some respects, riding outdoors is the easier option. I don't know if you've tried doing like an extended tempo session for an hour and a half, but to finish one of those, I mean, I don't think that I could finish an hour and a half tempo on the turbo, but outdoors, tapping along, it's quite easy to get those sort of middling endurance efforts out.
It is. I I agree. Actually, it's easier to get the power out outside, isn't it? Really, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I guess for me, I mean, I'm saying I love winter miles, but actually, I mean, I do love them. But if you have a family and kids, it's really difficult to get out there and do them. And if you're doing it properly, it takes up a quarter of your weekend. You know, so yeah. For me, I do ride indoors as well, obviously, quite a bit. For this month's Garmin giveaway, we've got the Garmin Varia RCT715. Now this is the one with the camera. So it's got a 1080p camera, shoots at 30 frames per second, so you can catch any car's registration number and close passes. It's also got an automatic incident capture that means that it continues recording during, before and after an incident. You can control it via the Garmin Varia app, and the footage is beamed straight to the app, so you can download it there onto a computer as well to view it. So this is all alongside the benefits of the basic radar system, which lets you know when a car's coming up behind you, when it's gone past, but this has got a camera as well. To be in with a chance of winning this, just head down into the description and get yourself entered.
So for this month's Bike of the Month, we've got the Factor Ostro Gravel, which Stefan, you just rode last weekend at King's Cup. How was it? Tell us about the bike.
I managed to puncture out within the first 5 minutes with a slash to the sidewall, and so it was a DNF for me, I'm afraid, in the Gravel Champs, which was bitterly disappointing. But on the other hand, at least it was a full weekend of riding, and so it wasn't just the Gravel Champs on the Saturday. There's also the Grand Fondo on the Sunday. So I managed to patch up the tyre, get everything rolling again, and so I can come back here and say, my first thought riding the Factor Ostro Gravel, and so there's that at least.
So tell us about it. What's it all about, and what did you think of it?
Well, we've seen so many gravel bikes this year that have been really targeting sort of like the racy side of gravel. I think that gravel bikes burst onto the scene a few years ago. People didn't really know what direction to take them in, and I think in the first part it was really going towards the bikepacking side of gravel, but we've seen a real flip round in the last few months, and pretty much every brand that you can think of has come up with a new model that is really targeting the sort of race-focused gravel, and that's exactly what the Factor Ostro Gravel is doing. It's designed for the UCI Gravel Champs and gravel races, and is heads down a racing bike.
Now I can see the bike behind us does have an integrated cockpit. Is aero something they were kind of looking into for this bike? Yeah,
I mean, the whole silhouette of the bike, it could almost pass, if it not for the knobbles of the tyres, it could almost pass for a road bike, or like the all-rounder type, like the Specialized SL7. It's got a very similar silhouette. It's got those camtails, the thickened head tube, and the down tube, and the bottom bracket area. Like that's almost larger than the chain ring itself. And so it's including all the cues essentially that we're seeing with road-focused bikes. And I think it's a bit of a curious addition to the bike, to be fair. With the gravel races, aero definitely does have a significant impact, not to the same extent as road, but with the speeds that people are going at, and with the time that they're spending out on the course, it definitely is a strong consideration. So I think it's quite notable then that Factor has sprinkled so many of these aero details throughout the bike. They've got the integrated cockpit, as I mentioned, and also the thicker tube shapes. And so how much of a difference is this going to really give you? It's hard to say, just being an armchair aerodynamicist right here. But on the other hand, the frame itself comes in at 900 grams. And so I think that if you can have all of these aero features in a frame that comes in at that weight, you might as well take them, mightn't you? It's not doing you any harm. Not by a long shot with the 900 grams of the frame, and so I'll take the aero benefits, whatever they actually give.
I guess aerodynamics is one thing, but there's something kind of slightly more crucial, especially with gravel racing, and that's got to be the handling of the bike. How was it actually? What was it like to have underneath you?
Well, it was really quite nice, I have to say. I mean, not only did the low weight, it's about 8 kilos, and so it's extremely zippy sort of with the accelerations, but then coming into the corners, the handling was really nice and snappy. The chainstay is really tight at 420 millimeters. It's got a rear end that's comparable to certain endurance models. I think the Trek de Marne has a similar rear end, and so it puts things in perspective there. That it's almost an endurance road bike in terms of the handling. It's not this large sort of plodding gravel bike. It's really, really quite zippy. And so with the course that we were riding, it for the most part was quite wide, double track, but there were some wooded sections, not lots, but yeah, enough to start getting a feel for how the bike was handling. And yeah, and it was really, really nice coming in and out of the corners. I think that one interesting contrast is with the Roval Gravel that released earlier this year. And so the engineers there say that the bike is compatible with tyres from 50mm to 25mm. And now this is certainly true in that you can fit a 25mm tyre on it and go for a ride. If you put those two wheels side by side, the difference is huge. And so there's, with no changes to the geometry at all, no flip chip in the front axle, the handling is not going to be the same between them, not by a long shot. And so it's quite nice that Factor here is given like a very nice clear bound to the tyres that it's optimised for, and the fact that you could fit, well, you could put a 23mm tyre on and ride it if you want, but Factor is very clear with the tyres that are actually optimised and the kind of handling that you can expect with these different tyre sizes, which is something quite nice, I think.
And even with all that tech, your race still ended in 5 minutes, meaning that a good set of tyres, absolutely critical, but then also that can just be what happens when you hit a rock.
Exactly. Yeah, you can't buy luck, can you?
Exactly. Yeah. So how much is this bike worth behind us?
So it's around about £8,500,
for the very top end, which is pretty good.
Yeah, I have to say, compared to like the Specialized Crux, which is going into 5 figures, and so many top end bikes now, if something's got some SRAM red on it, you almost expect 5 figures. And so for a top end bike, I think that the value is actually quite good as we can say that.
Relatively.
As good as we can say that £8,500 is.
So there we have it. That is the brand new Factor Ostro Gravel. Do let us know your thoughts on it in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, drop it a like, subscribe to the channel for more content, and we'll see you again very soon.
With the mercury plummeting and the clocks going back, it's time to dig out the winter steed. Dust off the tights and the Belgian booties. Pull on the Belgian booties.